if it really is about how we make decisions, if it really is about how we create value from those decisions, then in story business, I talk about different genres in this much the same way that stories have genres. So you could have a horror story, you could have a rom-com, you could have sci-fi. There's different genres, I think, of business storytelling.
This episode is brought to you by Lumina Growth Lab. At Lumina, we help professional learning and development companies who are struggling with predictable lead flow, a sniper approach to attracting the ideal clients, and a system that qualifies leads so they can have a smoother sales process, finally have scalability, and ultimately take their business to the next level. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because nothing seems to work outside of word of mouth and referral based lead generation. But with the right strategy and support, they're able to confidently add new channels of lead gen, leading to a packed pipeline that creates sustainable revenue and year-over-year growth for cheaper than ever before because of the use of AI technologies. If that sounds like you or someone you know, connect with me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about unlocking your business's potential. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix. I'm your host, Lisanne Murphy, and today I am joined by the incredibly talented and very generous Gavin McMahon. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on to the Marketing Matrix today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Guys, I am so excited to have Gavin on the show today. I had the opportunity to meet him recently, and in our very brief discussion, I was just really so amazed with his confidence, but also his down-to-earth nature in terms of his ability to create change in what he does. And so I'm really excited to hear his story, give him an opportunity to talk about what he does, and share a little bit about his book as well today. And so before I hand over the microphone, I'm going to introduce him, and then we'll be off to the races. So Gavin builds things. Once it was submarines, sport cars, and steel plants, big, complex systems built on logic and precise plans. But plans have a funny way of falling apart when people get involved. As Gavin tried to figure out why, one truth became clear. People don't move without a story. Business is more than just strategy and execution. It is persuasion and inspiration as well. So he switched gears, traded engineering for business, and earned an MBA in innovation strategy and information technology from the Institute thesis in France. Today, as CEO and co-founder of Fast Forward, he helps companies shape strategy, leadership, and culture through storytelling. Over the years, he's worked with some of the world's biggest brands and learned that even the best ideas will go nowhere if they aren't told well. Now, he's written a book about it called Story Business. So guys, wherever you're at, give Gavin a big round of applause. We're so excited to have you on the Marketing Matrix today.
Thank you.
Okay, so for people that don't know your background, I love how you framed it, that you went from engineering to business.
hmm
How did that transition happen? Like, was it kind of like forced by a market shift? Did you have like internal desires and you got bored? Was it like you had an opportunity from a mentor that you couldn't turn down? Like, I'm dying to hear the story. How did the switch happen?
Yeah, boredom plays a big role in the story. Well, so it starts out, my father was an engineer, and actually before him, his father was an engineer. So it was almost inevitable that I would end up becoming an engineer. And I think most parents are in this boat. They definitely want to make sure that their offspring is well set up as they traverse from being a kid to being an adult. So my father was convinced if you're an engineer, it'll all be fine. Engineering was fine. I like building things, but I did think it was a little bit boring. I mean, when I graduated university, I went to work for Vickers Shipbuilding in the UK, which is the equivalent of Electric Boat over here, making nuclear submarines. It was fine, but if you work in the defense industry, anyone that knows people that's worked in the defense industry, it's most of the time it's pretty slow. If you design something, nothing turns up until 3 or 4 years later because there's so many people, so many layers. It's such a big process. I ended up just on spec, kind of applying for a job, and the title of the job was Group Overseas Engineer. It was working in Africa. I ended up working in Africa, tooled around there for 3 or 4 years, building steel plants and other things, running the company when people left and someone had to go and no one else wanted to go. That was me. I stepped there, and then eventually kind of worked my way into I've got to do something different. Went to do an MBA, probably in my late 20s, just trying to figure out what I was going to do. Luckily, that MBA happened around the same time the internet was happening, probably even, before most organizations had email. That's when I was doing that and got very involved with Netscape and other companies, and then transitioned into, I ended up, long story short, working for Gartner, came over here to the US with Gartner, and then left Gartner about 25 years ago. All along that way, it was always, the engineering training and the kind of real life experience were always, I would say, clashing, because you have this logic, you have this plan, you have this way you think things can work and should work in your head. And then it hits the real world and you deal with people. And so I guess for my sins, that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing now.
I love it. It's fascinating. Okay. So you have an engineering background, but you anchor your transformation on the power of storytelling. So
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you didn't go into like operational process consulting, right? Because I mean, like to me, that would seem like a very logical connection between engineering, which is like very process oriented, like to like business consulting. But like storytelling is like and I know that there are frameworks for good storytelling, right? Framework like stories still have a process, but like storytelling is so much more fluid and ethereal and soft and dynamic and creative. And so I'm really curious, like what is your take with storytelling as an engineer? And why is storytelling so important?
Okay, so let me come back to that piece of the question, but I think it's important to understand there's a piece of the why that I guess I left out. Part of the why that I'm attracted to this and I like this is I'm always curious about how people make decisions, because people make decisions that, to me as an observer, may or may not be rational. Why are you doing that? And organizations make decisions like that. And I think whether you're in a big organization or a small organization, the value you create, what you do for your customers, is all based on how well you make those decisions. So I'm always curious about, well, why did you do that? And usually not in a good way. Why did you do that? So, yeah. And so now getting into storytelling and my definition of storytelling, I would say, I mean, everyone's exposed to stories all the time. Whether you watch television, you go to the movies, you're reading a story to your kid at bedtime. But my functional definition of storytelling for story business and for the idea that story and business are connected is it's a piece of information wrapped in emotion. And those two things are really important. The information is really important because that's the piece that helps you make the decision. The information is like as the emotion is like a stealth wrapper around the information. That's what lodges it in people's heads. If I just give you facts alone, you can sit there like a judge and jury and say, I don't agree with any of that, but I have to find a way to get it in your head. So there is a writer called Jonathan Gottschall who described this as a story as a trick for sneaking into the citadel of the human mind. And I like that. So my definition of story is it's a piece of information wrapped in emotion and you're using it for commercial purposes. So in other words, you're doing it because you want something. You want to make money somehow at the end of the day. So a piece of information wrapped in emotion used for commercial purposes.
I love that. That's fascinating.
It's
So,
very flexible,
yeah, I like it.
which is good.
Okay, so my biggest introduction to like business and storytelling is Donald Miller's Story Brand.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're good friends with him, if you know him, or if
I
you like
don't
were
know.
inspired by him, or like what?
Yeah, I don't know him. I know of him and of his work, and I think it's good. And I think that's the classic. I would imagine most people listening to this podcast now are thinking storytelling. Okay, that's marketing. That's how I brand. That's how I go out and present whatever it is about my company. And I think that's typically how storytelling has been used and presented. I actually take a slightly different view. I think storytelling is absolutely part of branding, but I think there are multiple uses of it. If it really is about how we make decisions, if it really is about how we create value from those decisions, then in story business, I talk about different genres. in this much the same way that stories have genres. So you could have a horror story, you could have a rom-com, you could have sci-fi. There's different genres, I think, of business storytelling. So the first to me is value storytelling. Value storytelling is, how do I persuade the people that are investing in me, not customers necessarily, but backers? If it's a big company on the stock market, if it's a small company, the people, my bank manager, how do I persuade them that I am actually creating value, or my company is creating value? So that's not just numbers, because you got to remember all the time you're speaking to people. People are human and they are making decisions. So the value storytelling is hugely important. The next genre for me is product storytelling. This is the idea that a product is not just a set of features and functions, although unfortunately that tends to be the lowest common denominator. But a product story is like a science fiction. Product stories are tales of the near future. Because even if I've invented something, a product that I'm selling to you, Lisanne, for you, it's new. So it's it's a new thing to you. So how do I create this? How do I close this gap between what is what is not part of your world today, and what hopefully makes your world a better place? So product storytelling is the second genre. Third genre to me then is brand storytelling. So most companies typically, especially smaller companies, start out as a product, and then they get bigger and bigger, and then they turn into a brand. So a brand is, to me, brand storytelling is about world building. It's about creating a world that you invite your customers into. And how do all the moving parts of that world connect? So we've got value storytelling, product storytelling, brand storytelling. Then I get to sales storytelling is my next genre. That's the one-on-one that moves something over the line, because we're all here to sell stuff. So how do we sell stuff, whatever the stuff is? Then the last two for me are leadership storytelling, because we've got people inside the organization and we ideally want to scale. How do I get all those people lined up and moving in the same direction? How do I give them shared context? And the very last one is culture storytelling. When I'm gone, when I'm not around, how do I keep all that going? And that is the shared law. So I think these are all different genres of storytelling. The basic tools of storytelling are the same, but they're applied in many different ways. And it's much more than, it's not just marketing's job, basically.
Mm, I love that. Well, and I love that, like,
Even though we're on the Marketing Matrix podcast, for everyone that's listening, if you're a marketer, it's not just your job, it's everyone's job.
I love that. Well, and I love too how, like, you've classified, like, different areas where stories, well, like you said, like, stories are important in every component of the business, but how you've classified them in terms of, like, genres where you leverage tools of this genre to help with this, like with culture and product and selling and things like that. So I think it's super brilliant because, automatically when you're talking about like sci-fi, like in my mind, like I'm thinking of specific devices, right? That like sci-fi movies use to paint the picture of the future, like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
So that's so neat. I love it. I
There's
love it.
also, this didn't really make it into the book, but there's also a strange relationship, I think, between science fiction and engineering and engineers, people that build products. And you can trace kind of many ideas. One of the people I spoke to in researching the book was the guy who had the patent for the Apple AirPod. So the little white things that hang in most people's ears if they have an iPhone. And it's funny because you could trace that. And I was speaking to him, and there wasn't a direct connection. I was looking for one that wasn't there. But if in high school you were made to read Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury, who is a science fiction writer who wrote that book, the main hero protagonist's wife is addicted to basically big screen television, is flooded with media all the time, and always has these things that Bradbury calls shells in her ear, which are the things that we have today, which we think are Apple earbuds or the Google version of the same thing. So there's a weird relationship between those things. The classic Star Trek flip communicator became the flip phone. There's always a relationship between these things. So this act of invention, I mean, if you're building something as a product, you have to somehow describe that thing you never build it alone. You're building it with other people. So how do you describe that to other people? And so product storytelling isn't just I built the thing, how do I tell the story of the thing I built? It's how do I tell the story along the way during the act of building the thing?
Mm. So smart. I love it. Oh man, you're making like my mind race with different questions and how things have come about. And I can totally tell with your master's being an innovation, I can totally tell that like innovation, innovative thinking, my guess comes into play a lot with the companies that you consult with.
Yeah, I think, I mean, basically in our work at Fast Forward, we work mostly with large companies, Fortune 500 companies typically, and a lot of it is that they're going through some kind of change, digital transformation. They're doing all sorts of change with AI. A lot of it is how do you unlearn the past and how do you learn whatever it is you need for the future? It's all around that kind of mode of change. So it's not necessarily innovation as in I'm going to come up with the next better mousetrap, but it's innovating around the way people do things.
Mm, I love that. So, what are the typical symptoms that companies are experiencing that indicate to you that they need help with their storytelling?
Hmm, that's a good question. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the book, one of the chapters in the book, I think it's my chapter memory is not very good, but I think it's the fourth chapter is some of the tools that we typically use. And one of the tools that we use is a tool called the hero formula, which I didn't invent. A friend of mine called Peter Watts came up with this one day. And the hero formula is very simple. We bring X to Y to deal with Z. And if you think about the replacing the X and the Y and the Z in the formula, we is obviously the company, whatever company you are with, bring X. That's the tool or the product that you're selling. So in a story, you could think about that as the magic beans. So we bring magic beans or a magical sword to Y. That's the hero. That's the person. That's your potential customer. That's your prospect. That's the person you're speaking to. It's not you. Most people, and that's, you asked what one of the flaws was. I think one of the flaws is where companies see themselves as the hero riding in on a white horse to help. No, the hero is always the person you're speaking to because everyone is the hero of their own story. So it's always your customer. So we bring X, your product, magic beans, magical sword, to Y, your customer or prospect, to deal with Z. Z is the villain that they're dealing with. So I would say there's a couple of flaws that people, if you just take that piece, that hero formula, there's a couple of flaws that companies have. One is they are the hero of the story, which is a complete turnoff. No one cares. No one cares about your company, really. They care about their company. They care about what they're doing, and they care more specifically about them and how they're going to do well, which is why they are the hero of their own story. And the other thing is, people truncate that formula. So they don't go, we bring X to Y to deal with Z. They go, we bring X. So our company, has this magical bean. It's a wonderful magical bean. It does all sorts of things. It's this snake oil, it's this elixir, it does. And they list features and functions and things that they think are differentiators, but really aren't. And they don't at all deal with the hero of the story or the villain. And if you do that, then you complete the picture. And you honestly, I mean, you can go and look at your website today and ask yourself, is it speaking to the hero? Is it speaking to the prospective customer, or is it you speaking to yourself in your language?
That is like that is a like really revealing exercise, I bet, right? Like, are you just touting the power of your magical beans, or are you like saying like, if you are wanting these results, right? Like we can help you get them faster or more effectively or more efficiently. That's so good. So good. I love that. And my guess is that do companies are they aware of that problem, or does it take some discovery for them to realize like that to be like eliminated, that
I
they're
think the
having issues?
difference between smaller companies and larger companies is small companies make decisions a lot faster and move a lot faster. They just don't have the same resources. Large companies take a long time to realize something because it's never one person. There's a whole system and a whole group of people. Yeah, I think especially when you're dealing with a large company, that there's a whole group of people that know or kind of know, but they feel like there's nothing we can do about this. And so it does take I would guess, an outside agitator or a catalyst, which we act as sometimes to help them see that there's an issue. I think there's usually a lot of people that struggle with, they know something's not quite right and they can tell you what's not quite right, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And they really don't have a coalition of the willing inside the company to do something about it. So it's easier for small companies than it is for large companies, but that's typically the way it goes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really interested since Fast Forward works predominantly with quite large companies. What is the function of your book strategically in your business? Because usually people use the book as a leverage point to get into more companies. Maybe it's an authority speaking piece. I'm just curious, like what role the book is playing for you, either personally or in your company as well.
Well, so I personally, I wrote the book for very selfish reasons. It had all this stuff rattling around in my head, and I would talk about it to all sorts of people for a long time. And I remember um, a former professor of mine from a long time ago, Mel Horowitz, said to me one day, you can talk about all this stuff, but until you write it down, there is no rigor. And so for me, it was the act of writing it all down that actually got it all sorted out, because it wasn't really all sorted out and it wasn't really clear and it was only a half finished thought. So, in doing that, I really just discovered I quite like writing. So for me, step one was I'd just like to get it all down on paper. I'd like to write it. And then I really found I enjoyed the process of publishing the book. I mean, I hope as people pick up the book and they read it, I think there's something in it for, I mean, I think most people probably think this, but I think there's something in it for everyone in all walks of life. I've certainly had that feedback. I've had feedback from, politicians, people that are music producers, people that are, I didn't necessarily write the book for that piece. I wrote it for somebody that's working in corporate America that is really struggling with getting their idea across. But it seems like it's resonating with a lot of different people. We're using it honestly as a as a way to, I think, explain what we do a little bit better, and we're using it as a way to talk to people at the level that we need to talk to. So yeah, it's been quite useful for that.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of years ago, I just challenged myself to self-publish a book just for the sake of doing it, and I was kind of experimenting with some things, but the process of writing a book, because it needs to have like a beginning, middle, and end,
Yeah.
it forces organization to thought for sure. And
Mhm.
so I love that it's like, it pulled everything together, it completed thoughts, I'm sure you even learned a lot about your own frameworks and methodologies as you went
Oh
through
yeah,
it.
yeah. Things definitely changed in the process because once you line everything up and you figure it doesn't make sense anymore when it's actually all lined up. So you're tweaking things. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
was
love that.
told by my publisher that there are kind of three phases to writing a book. There's writing, editing, and promotion. And people generally like different ones of those. I really like writing. Editing was okay. Promotion, even though this is a lovely podcast, promotion is like the third circle of hell for me. It's like, I don't really want to do that. But here we are.
Here we are. And so you get to be the dancing monkey talking about it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, that's fantastic.
No, but
Well,
I do like it when people come back and they've picked it up and they've said, hey, this idea that I found here sparked another idea, and then we talk about something else, and then we did this. That's what brings me joy.
yeah, I love that. Since your business has been around for quite some time and your frameworks are established and you're working with large companies, like what are some of your focuses for 2026 in terms of either internal development or company growth? Like what are you guys focused on next year?
As a company, we're always looking to scale, but we want to do that deliberately and intentionally, and we want to do that in a way where it causes a little bit of pain, but mostly it causes growth. I think the two things come hand in hand. So you have to think about, I mean, we're intentionally constantly trying to scale and very aware and talk openly. We're a small company, so it's about 25 or so people. We talk openly about how there will be things we do that are painful, but if we keep moving we're not going to just ignore the pain and hope it goes away. We're going to scale what we do, how we do it, whether it's the business development side of things, whether it's the delivery side of things. And as we find the pain, then we're going to fix that and scale. So our focus is scale. Our focus is, we've had 2 or 3 values or principles really of since we started the company. We've been around for 25 years, or next year will be our 25th year. One of them is touch a client every day. We're a very client-centered company. So it's a bad day when someone isn't somehow talking to a client. That has a lot of benefits, but it has some downside. One of the downsides is you don't necessarily get very institutional or very productized very quickly. One of the benefits is you are very client-focused. A second principle that we have is don't compromise on the deliverables. So we're always trying to make things better, both internally and externally and for our clients. And a third is what we say, be choosy. We just know as a small company, we don't have that many resources. So we have to be really choosy about the clients we work with, the projects that we take on, and the people that we bring on, honestly. So we're scaling, but we're hopefully holding true to the way we think about things.
I love that. And what are some of the tools, tactics, channels you're using to scale or that you're planning to dive into deeper?
For us, we we s- so if you're talking about how do we scale and sell, we basically we we work through relationships. I mean, we've found that the best client is someone that's been a client or is a client, and they just happen to have moved companies. So we will find that we have a new logo because somebody left company A and went to company B, and then they brought us in. And that happens when you do good work and you build relationships. So we've spent most of our time focused on that, and it works for us. We are not the kind of company we've actually, I would say, done what most people consider to be um, marketing. We do a terrible job of. We don't really. I mean, we have a website, we have SEO, we have all that kind of stuff. You can go and look at fastforward.com, but hardly any of our clients come through somebody knocking on the door of a website. It's just not how our business model works or how we do what we do.
I love it. Well, and I think, I mean,
Mhm.
it speaks to the testament of the quality of work that you do, right? That like you can, and also how smart it is, first of all, to like follow people that you've worked with, right? Because like if you've built that relationship of trust and like it's maintained a good relationship, when they move companies, obviously, like if their new company is having a similar issue, or like you're going to be someone that is more top of mind to be like, oh, I worked with this guy once and he did great work. Like let's find him again.
Well, luckily, I would say we're in a fairly industry agnostic business. So it's not like we need to sell to banks because we have banking software, or we need to sell to, consumers in Ohio because we've got a shop in Ohio. What we do is, a lot of it is helping organizations change, big organizations change, and a lot of that is about people. And the kind of people engineering is not exactly the right word, but it's about how do you get people to see themselves in the picture of whatever is new. It doesn't really that doesn't really change from industry to industry. I mean, all industries are constantly going through change. AI is a massive outside stimulus for change. And then you've got to somehow get your people through that. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing. All the companies we work with, they all do the same thing, from, you know, MasterCard to Verizon to Allstate to whoever. They're all selling stuff. Every company in the world, actually. I mean, you'll never read this in a McKinsey article or a McKinsey magazine, but every business's strategy is the same thing. It's 2 words: sell stuff. Now, how you sell and what stuff you build are slightly different, but you're still selling stuff. So in a big organization of 50,000 people, you've got a whole army of people lined up against selling stuff, and you've divided this up into so many pieces that you've got natural bureaucracies, you've got silos, you've got microcultures, you've got all sorts of things that enable the selling of stuff, but they also get in the way of whatever the next phase of selling the stuff is. So
Mm,
for me personally, a lot of the work we do is very, you could work with a client in banking and a client you know, in an AI, in a hot AI tech company. They're still dealing with the same stuff because it's all people.
yeah, yeah. And ultimately trying to do the same thing, which is sell stuff. Yeah. So you brought up AI, which is like the topic
Yeah.
of the minute, not even the
I was at a
day.
conference yesterday talking about it. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
all anyone wants to talk about.
I know, right? So like, should we avoid the subject or should we talk about it for a minute?
No, we can talk.
So I'm curious, like how are you leveraging AI within your business? And in terms of either whether it's with product development or delivery or in your marketing efforts or in your training. I'm just curious how you're wanting to leverage AI within your own company.
So the answer is yes to all of the above for us. We've been using AI actually in our work for the last, 2.5 years. So I think I wouldn't say we were first there, but we were on the bandwagon pretty early. The way we started was just learning and experimenting. So I think for the first year, people had license to go and experiment and do whatever you want with it, pretty much. Just don't break anything if you can avoid it. Don't mess up, but experiment because I think people have to get comfortable with it. And I think that's the first phase of AI. We're now in what I call the second phase, which is productivity. So we're using AI in all sorts of different workflows. We have a tremendous amount of IP, intellectual capital, stuff, tools, ways of looking at things. You could think about it as a big box. It's almost like everyone has one of these rooms. Maybe you don't, but people have rooms in the house like with a load of junk in, but you don't want to throw any of the junk away because it could be useful one day. So we have a lot of IP like that. So we're using AI to help us clean and manage all of that. We're using AI. We've built internal coaches we have, part of how we deliver what we deliver is through coaching and training and consulting. So we have built internal coaches for our coaches so they can help, the AI knows our IP and it can help all our coaches. We're using it in our process and our workflows. So we're using it all the way along. And I think the next step, and we're actively exploring this with some clients right now, the next step is how does it change your business model? And I think we're going to see, I think most companies are either in the first or second phase, productivity, experimentation or productivity. I think the final phase is changing the fundamental business model. Now, as a small company, I think it's much easier. Again, it's much easier for a small company to do that than a large company because a large company has a lot of inherent, I think, complexity built in, maybe unnecessary, but it has complexity built in. It has a lot of vested interest built in. It's a lot harder for them to change. So I think the business model change, I think the coaching industry is going to be massively disrupted by AI. I think the traditional kind of Gartner-like consulting knowledge industry is going to be massively upset by AI. We've got to, pay attention to what goes on and look at how the business model works and figure out what do we do next. And we're actively doing that.
I love it. Yeah, this is like really only like the tip of the iceberg here. And yeah, you're the second person just in the last 48 hours that I've heard talk about how disruptive AI is going to be to the coaching industry, right? Because of people's ability to have knowledge at their fingertips that's customized in a certain voice or in a certain way for their certain situation
Yeah.
immediately, And so it's fascinating.
But the problem with that is that if you just buy, I mean, there are ones you can buy now. You can buy an off the shelf leadership coach that will help you with leadership, or you could just, turn OpenAI or Gemini into your own coach. It doesn't give you as an individual, it gives you as an individual some advantage before everyone else does it. It doesn't give a company any lasting advantage. So the question is, do you like where are you trying to extract value from your business? If you don't think people are valuable in your business and they're just parts of the machine, then it doesn't matter. You could just buy an off the shelf at Amazon AI coach and have that help your people. If you really think actually the value from my business comes from my people making smarter decisions every day, then you wouldn't do it that way. So I think there's a lot of questions around that. I think one of the things I've been thinking about lately with AI is I think AI is a big, well, first of all, there's a whole ethical side to AI, which I'm not even going to get into, but where a lot of these models have been trained on copyrighted material that they did not necessarily pay the copyright for and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, Pandora's box has been opened, and it's now being litigated, and it's, not my fight. But I think what is essentially going to happen is knowledge is going to be commoditized more and more. It's going to be easier for me. I mean, I know nothing about, well, coding is a good example. I haven't written a line of computer code since computer club in the equivalent of high school. So many, many years ago. But 2 weeks ago, I made an app in about an hour, vibe coded an app with AI. So knowledge is increasingly commoditized. I would imagine, if I got a parking ticket and I wanted to go and argue that in court, even though I know nothing about the law, I could get that knowledge or get up to speed to a certain level pretty quickly now. And as AI is only getting better, that ability is going to get better. Know-how, on the other hand, the ability to put that knowledge into practice and the level of quality around it, that I think becomes even more valuable than it is today. And so I think companies need to figure out that particular equation, because the current state of AI, with the caveat that it's going to get better and it's going to change, but the current state of AI is all about, I can do whatever I do today faster. It doesn't make it of greater quality. And I think that's the challenge that most people and companies have. How do I not only get more productivity out of it, but how do I get greater quality out of it? Because otherwise I'm just, automating sludge.
Yeah, such a good point. Well, and I also love like the concept that you brought up that I'm going to be noodling on for a while actually is everything like I can totally tell how everything kind of comes back to decision making for you, right? Like that was like how like, stories were formulated. You're also like how you make decisions in terms of how you leverage AI, utilize AI, prompt AI, and at the end of the day, like our lives are just based on a series of decisions, right? And so really how I think I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words, but like just the way you said it, I was like, oh yeah, wow, like because AI can't take away our decision making, and
Yeah,
so
humans are choice-making machines. That's all we do every day. We choose to get up or we choose to lie in bed and call in sick. We choose to put on, you know, pants or not put on pants. We choose to put on one shoe in front of the other. We choose to have this conversation with someone or avoid that conversation. We choose to be nice. We choose to be offended. We make choices all day. And those, when you get together in a company, in a business, the collection of choices is going to create value. We had a incident. I don't need to get into what it is, but we have oil heat. Our oil heat broke down. They sent someone around. The person that did the fixing of the heater was perfectly nice, but didn't manage to fix it. We ended up talking to the lady on the phone who sends out the engineers, and I don't know if she's choosing to be like, or she is, to me, she's actively choosing to be like that, but she was choosing to be, let's say in a nice way, not helpful at all. And that's a choice she's making. But that choice that individual is making is not helping that company, because we are not going to stay with our oil service with that company. So people are making choices. So even if you have a small business, knowing what choices people make and how those choices are cascading and affecting other people is hugely important, because it ultimately is going to create or destroy value for you.
such a good point, such a good point. Man, well, this conversation, I feel like it just keeps getting juicier and juicier, and and I hate to cut it, but we have the hour is nigh. We're about to turn into pumpkins. So thank you for bringing your experience, your expertise, your philosophy, your insight, and your foresight. And it really has just been a joy having you on the Marketing Matrix today. So thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for having me, Lisa, and it's been a pleasure.
So for people that want to find you, follow you, get Story Business, the book, get in touch with you for company inquiry, how do people find you?
Sure. If you're interested in the book, it's Story Business. You can find it on Amazon, or you could go to, there's a book website, story-business.com. If you're interested in Fast Forward or learning more about us, it's Fast Forward with two S's, so FASS forward.com. And I'm on, if you look for me on LinkedIn, you'll find me. There's not that many Gavins at Fast Forward.
I love it. Guys, I'm going to put all the links to that in the episode notes so that you can have access to those resources. I'm going to be getting my copy of the book soon, and so I'm really excited to dive into that and leverage the different genres of storytelling in my business. And so again, Gavin, thank you so much for coming. And guys, wherever you are listening, whether you're in your kitchen, in your car, or at Costco, wherever it might be, thank you so much for being a part of the Marketing Matrix today. And we know your time is valuable. So for you to spend some time with us absolutely means the world. So again, thank you so much.